Hi, I'm Fu Wen with Apex Media Firm. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you the process from start to finish to create a great clip for a 10 seconds IGTV story. This will cover everything from importing clips in DaVinci Resolve 17 to framing, stabilizing footage, color grading, and exporting delivery settings. Let's get started. First, what we want to do is we want to set the timeline resolution and the timeline frame rate to the correct settings. So for Instagram stories, we want to go to choose custom, and for resolution, we will choose 1080 by 1920. Timeline frame rate, we're going to choose 29.97, and playback frame rate is going to be exactly the same. Then we hit save. This will change your project frame rate, hit yes. So the first thing we want to do, let me delete this, is to create a new bin. So this would be IG stories. So this is the particular clip that we are choosing. It's going to ask you to change your project frame rate. For this, we do not want to change because our timeline settings is at 29.97 frames per second, whereas our clip is at 60 frames per second or 59.94. So this one we will choose don't change. Now, if you were recording at 30 frames per second and your timeline is at 24 frames, you would want to change. So here's the clip that we have right here. And what you first notice is that the clip will be 16 by 9 and your timeline resolution is 9 by 16. So we go into the edit page, and right now what we want to do is we want to be able to choose our in and out points, and we have about 5 seconds since we're going to do a very slow motion footage. We're going to choose, and by playing it we'll know when to start. Right here looks like a pretty good starting point, and right here looks like a pretty good ending point. So we'll just choose any area, then we click an out point. We drag that clip down onto the timeline, and we choose the audio and we delete it. However, sometimes with DaVinci Resolve, this might be enabled, so we want to make sure that we disable this by left clicking it, so that way we can choose only the audio as opposed to audio and video. Right now the link is on, so if you were to click the video, it will automatically link both the video and the audio. So since we don't want that, we will click the audio and we will delete. Now we play it back and it looks pretty solid. First of all, we need to zoom in. So by clicking the video, the zoom aspect normally is 3.15. This will give you no black bars on the bottom and no black bars up top. See, if we were to choose 3, there will be black bars up top and bottom. So we want to have one more pixel, so we'll choose 3.16. Right now, we want to slow down the footage as well, so we choose the first 5 seconds of this clip, pull it back. Right now, and I know that the framing is completely off right now, but we need to change the clip speed to 50% from 60 frames to 30 frames per second and drag this out to 10 seconds. So it looks nice in slow motion. But our framing is terrible. So it looks like we probably want to start it around here. And we want to probably end it here. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning. First of all, we need to reframe. So in order to reframe a clip, we go and select the clip, and all over to the right panel, the right side panel, you will see Smart Reframe. With Smart Reframe, you can choose the reference point, and then we can click the reference point and choose her directly. By choosing her, then we hit the reframe button. It will analyze the clip and frame your video for you. This is probably the easiest way to reframe footage. But as you can probably tell, there are a little bit of a camera shake that's involved. And because of the camera shake, we need to stabilize the footage. So down on the very bottom, we'll have a stabilization area. Oh, and we should probably choose similarity. If you don't know the difference between perspective, similarity, and translation, just consider perspective as being the most stable, the most stabilization in all axes. And this is pretty much high, medium, and low. Most of the time, high is going to look absolutely terrible. So we will choose medium. This will analyze the clip and make sure that the similarity between how she is with the background will be stabilized footage across the board. So let's play this again and take a look, and that looks really solid. By reframing and stabilizing, you get this really nice movement, and it makes things a lot easier. So now we're already done with that. The next step is to pretty much color grade. So we go down to the color panel and we open it up. Okay, first of all, we need to create a couple of nodes. The first node is going to most likely is noise reduction, but for IG stories, we don't need noise reduction. So we will be doing contrast first, log adjustments next, and we will be doing white balance, saturation. I particularly like to do highlight and shadows. I know it's looking crazy right now, but you guys will get it. Then we create a look adjustment and a F-LUT, which is a finishing LUT from Lens Distortion. This one most likely will be sharpen, or right before sharpen, we want to create a glow if we want to use it. Now we can right click any particular area and go to clean up node graph. This will make your node graph nice and clean for you so you can work on the image. All right, let's work on the first node. So by looking at this graph here, what we want to do is we want to kind of extend it out. So by looking at the first graph, we want to go to our primaries wheel and we want to boost up our contrast. Now this is we don't want to boost it up too much as it kills the tonal range of the skin. So we probably want to do it about 1.45. Then we pivot to make sure that our skin and highlight details doesn't get too exaggerated. Alright, that's pretty much it for the contrast. Then we go over to log. So with log, we can push and pull a little bit more. It's a little bit easier. So what we want to do is we want to make the gain higher so that way it uses the full scale. And then we want to pull down the lift a little bit. Now, the one thing we don't want to do, the one thing we want to pay attention to is having these low points go below the low point. So we don't want that. And we also want to take a look at the image and make sure that the image is nice and beautiful. We don't want to lose any type of shadow detail or highlight detail throughout the footage. So it looks pretty solid. Now you see there, and in this particular point, there are moments that it clips over the 1023 IRE. So this right here would be clipping. However, it's really just this light right here that's clipping. So it's not really a big problem in the footage. Our main objective is to make sure that she shines. So this is a good reference frame right here. So since we're done with that, then we go over to our white balance. Because I don't think we need to change our gamma. We might need, actually, right now we're just doing correction. Okay, now we go over to our white balance. And with white balance, we don't want it to be too, too orange or too blue. So we want to have the perfect white balance. With DaVinci Resolve, you can do white balancing pretty easily by choosing this water dropper and clicking on anything that's gray, and it will pretty much automatically white balance. Now you can manually white balance yourself, but as long as you get close to it, it's good enough. So after you do your white balance, then you go to saturation. Let's bump up the saturation a little bit. Now, too much saturation looks like this, so we don't want that. So we probably want to bump up to about 62 and maybe do a little bit of a color boost to about maybe 6. This brings in the natural colors of your footage. Too much color boost, it will look terrible. So that looks pretty good to me. Highlight ranges. Now, this particular clip, we won't need our highlights and shadows as much, but we'll save that. We'll save these notes for later if we need to adjust it. So after this is done, then we do our look adjustment and our finishing LUT. Actually, yeah, let's actually change this to skin. We need to focus on her skin. So in order to color grade her skin, we will open up the skin panel or the qualifier panel, and we will enable the highlights. So that way when we choose our qualifier for just her skin, we can see what we're actually choosing. So we select her skin, and we want to make sure that we get all of the highlights in, all of the shades. So this looks good. This looks pretty solid. And if we scrub through the footage, we'll see that the highlight on her nose is not there. Also, her jacket is selected as well. Now, we don't want to change the skin tones and also affect the jacket color. So with this qualifier, we're going to denoise it to about 10 is good. And we're going to blur it just a little bit to 3. Yeah, that looks pretty good in general. There you go. So that covers most of her skin. We need to be able to move this so it covers her skin. There you go. So that covers most of her skin. Now we want to do a mask. By masking, we can choose only her face. So we take a middle point here. We create a circle. Well, by masking, we need to make sure that we're on this particular window to create a window. Now we will choose only her face and a portion of her neck, because her neck is also within the skin. We will feather this out a little bit so it's not a drastic cut. And from here, what we need to do is we need to track it. So the last thing we want to track is the 3D. We don't need to track her in 3D. and we most likely don't need to rotate. Now we do need to zoom, pan, and tilt. So let's go ahead and track her forward, and we're also going to track her backwards in the clip. Okay, so this is the final tracking so far. And you'll notice that the nose is going to flicker a little. So that means that we probably need to go back into our qualifier and expand this out a little bit. Because we don't want her nose to be flickering through the footage. Let's denoise this even more. And we'll blur it even more just to make sure that it's not noticeable in the final footage. So right here it's a great qualifier because we're doing simple skin restoration. So next step is to open up the vector scope and enabling, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna enable the 2x zoom and the show skin tone indicator. Once we open that, then we select our highlight, and what you're gonna see is you're gonna see the tonal range of the skin. Now we want to have this tonal range on the line. So in order to do that, we have to go back to our color wheels. And since we're only affecting her skin, we need to change the hue to move the line over to where she is, to the skin indicator line. Also, you'll notice that there's a little bit of kind of like a curve here and a curve over here. So we want to lower this down a little bit. We want to make sure that we move her tonal range correctly. So we want to get rid of the greens inside her skin. All right, that looks pretty solid enough. So before you'll see that it's there's a little bit of a green shift, and now her skin looks perfect with the skin indicator line. This will depend on the monitor or screen that you're viewing this on, but on my screen it looks perfect. So now we want to, and since we're working on skin, we want to change the mid-tone details down to about maybe 30 to make the skin nice, and we want to make the face pop a little bit. So, but not too much, you see. So we're gonna turn up the contrast to probably about 1.1. So now here's the footage. Here we might see that it's a little too bright. Well, it looks like the lighting changes from the beginning of the clip to the ending of the clip. So in order to solve this, so here's a trick that I will show you in just a little bit. So the log looks good here, and we're gonna have to change variables midway through because that gets really bright. So now we will open up keyframes. Actually, we will create a new node, and we will name it KF log. So we know that it's keyframe log. And in the keyframe, has a corrector 3. So we're gonna enable the corrector 3. Add dynamic keyframe here. And as we go through, we'll see that right here, it's a little bit on the dark side. So we will pull up the gamma a little bit. And here is where it gets a little too bright. So we will lower down the gamma. And towards the end, we want to make sure that our gamma is perfect. So we will lower down the gamma and we'll lower, oh, no. I don't know why DaVinci Resolve is going to extremes. The gain's a little too high. And we want to pull the midtones a little lower. Right there looks good. And our highlights, we want to keep it. Okay, so now when we replay the footage, the lighting will seem consistent from beginning to end. There you go, perfect. So now we go back to our skin, because skin is very important. We want to do the same, because the skin will be affected. So since skin is on node 9, we're going to enable the keyframe in the very beginning, and we're going to right click the corrector 9 and we'll add a dynamic keyframe. So right here in the very beginning, we probably, I feel like it's a little bit too dark on her face. So let's keep it at 0. It looks solid. We're gonna go and move to here. We might want to lower it down just a little bit. And here we want to most likely turn down the gain. Bring up the midtones a little bit. There you go. So now we have a really nice, smooth transition. You don't see her skin change. It kind of does at the end. So probably want to move that down just a little. So there's no shift in lighting for her skin. There you go. That looks perfect. So right now, once we're done all of this, then we can create a look adjustment. And a look adjustment, I'm not going to go through it because you can create any type of look adjustment you want. You can create it to look, sepia tone, black and white, or you can want to have a kind of like a monochromatic look. What I find out is with particular finishing LUTs by Lens Distortion, we can just choose cashmere. So we choose that and we drag it into the FLUT, and it creates this look that's very filmic. And that looks great so far. But the one thing you notice is her face doesn't stand out from the background. So we clean up this node again. And now in terms of glow, what we're going to do is we're going to make face. And we're going to do the same thing for face. So we're going to create another circle. And this is going to be a very simple, nothing crazy. I want to feather this out as much as possible. And what we're going to do is we're probably going to create a vignette. So that way it brings her out, and also the background would be a little bit darker to kind of make her stand out. So in order to do that, we have to, we're selecting just this particular area, her face, and we're going to track it later. But we also want to create a new node, and we want to create an outside node. So this outside node will be everything but her. So this is how we can create a vignette that we can control appropriately. Now, of course, we can create a vignette that does everything, but it won't track her throughout, the frame. So this is the way that I like to create a vignette, but we're going to create that after we track her. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to try to track her from the very beginning. And we're going to start tracking her. That looks pretty solid. And from here, we're going to create a new node, and we're going to create an outside layer, which will be exactly the same. It will have the tracking, but without her. Okay, so this one is with her. And of course, any type of adjustments you need to make, like here, it's a little bit out of frame. So if it's out of frame, we click frame here, and then what we do is we adjust it, and it will create an easy in. See? So that way it is perfectly aligned. All right, so here what we want to do is we want to bring her out. So by bringing her out, we want the waveform, and it's really easy. We just kind of offset her up a little bit. So the standard is 25. We offset her to about maybe 28. Yeah, I would say 28.75. And then on the other node, this will be on the vignette node, we will bring the offset down a little. And what you'll see is you'll see the background kind of get darker, see? And this pulls the subject forward into the frame. So it looks really nice and perfect. Now on to delivery. So for delivery, we're gonna create a new file name. Actually, we're gonna browse into the folder first, stories. And we're gonna name it IG story. So MP4 is good. H.264, we don't want to use H.265 because IG doesn't support H.265 codec. Native is good, and pretty much everything we should set it at best. We add to render queue, and that's it. Now we hit the render button, and it should be completed in no time. And there you go, from start to finish. And here's the final product.